Hello, and welcome to episode 64 of the DX Mentor, a discussion with Jeffrey, K1ZN. Thank you for joining us. I'm Bill, AJ8B. If this is the first time you're joining us, welcome. We have a back catalog of over 60 episodes covering many aspects of DX. Please check them out. If you're new to DXing, I would really recommend episode 1 as it was recorded with several world-class DXers. You will get a feel for the excitement that goes with chasing DX. If you like what you find, please subscribe, like, and share to always be notified about upcoming events. Another way to keep in touch with us and also to find out about current DX information is via the DX Mentor Facebook page. Just go to Facebook and search on the DX Mentor. I will be posting about upcoming podcasts as well as other DX events, so please follow us. I received this email from my friend Yanez, S51DX. I think this is just amazing. Bill, thank you for the latest newsletter. I wanted to let you know that I managed to make over 77,000 QSOs in 2024. I currently have 788,000 QSOs in my log overall. I'm trying to be active as much as I can this year, trying to reach 164,000 QSOs in 2025. I hope to hear you over the bands in the future. Good health to you and your family. 7-3 and good DX from Yanez, S51DX. That is absolutely amazing. I also received this. Hi, Bill. Despite having my license for over 26 years and HF privileges since 2007, I haven't really had an HF station until recently. My first contact was loaded into LOTW, Logbook of the World, on January 24th, and I submitted it for DX phone and mixed on March 11th. I received a message in Logbook of the World that my application was completed on 3/28/2025 at 1959 Zulu. I achieved DXCC in just 17 days. I was able to accomplish this with a Flex 8600 Dream Station and a Mosley RV7C with 4 radials. Pretty cool. I'm getting close now with other bands as well. I have 91 on 10 meters, 83 on 15, and 80 on 20 meters. Hopefully, CQ Worldwide WPX will push those numbers a bit higher once everyone else loads their log into LOTW. 7-3 for now, and keep up the good work. Tim, N9PN. Wow, congratulations also to you, Tim. That is great work. If you have an accomplishment that you would like to share, just send it to me at thedxmentor@gmail.com, just like Tim and Yanez did. You can check the show notes for any of the information that we'll be discussing today. Our guests are Jeff, K1ZN, and Joe, WAGEX. Jeff and Joe are experienced, passionate DXers, and the conversation should be lively and informative. Jeff, K1ZN, has many accomplishments, knows a lot about all aspects of DXing, and is an experienced IOTA chaser. He will share all that with us, as well as some discussion about his book on DXing. So let's get started. Well, hello and welcome to the DX Mentor episode for this week. I'm Bill, AJ8B, and I'm really excited to have an extremely knowledgeable ham with us, Jeff, K1ZN. Jeff seems to know a lot about everything we do, and I can't wait to kind of tap into that knowledge. And Joe and I always come away learning things, and I'm looking forward to doing the same thing today. And I still have Joe with us, of course, WAGEX. Joe, say hello and tell us about yourself.
Well, hello, Bill. Hello, Jeff. Nice to be here with you guys today. And like I usually say, got started when I was a technician, got hooked on 6 and 2 meters, particularly 6 meters, and upgraded up. But once I worked into the Caribbean on 6 meters, I was just hooked on being a DXer and then forming D expeditions, and I was lucky enough to be on 62. So very proud of some of the trips that I have been on. So Jeff, tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get started?
Well, Joe, Bill, I've been engaged in this hobby now since the late 1960s, when I was getting out of junior high school, going into high school. I grew up in New York City, and I grew up in an environment that did anything but lend itself to ham radio. It was a 6-story walk-up building in downtown Brooklyn. There was no way you could possibly put an antenna up outside the building. But fortunately, my father being a Navy man and my next door, his next door neighbor, my next door neighbor being a Navy person as well, electronics person. I was given BUPERS manuals, if that's a good term, Bureau of Personnel training manuals, Navy training manuals on electronics. And I sort of found that I had an affinity for electronics. And this individual also had a ham radio license and had managed to string wire antennas up around the inside rooms in the apartment house that he was living in, and did quite well. Of course, CW mainly, if not exclusively. Though I never picked up, I never had an ear for CW. I certainly passed the tests necessary to get an extra class ticket. But while I have some 300 or so entities on CW, they are basically 5NNTU type of of QSOs. But I fell in love with the hobby as a youngster. And the flip side of this little story is my mom's sister moved to Baltimore from New York City, and they were very close. And we would travel on the train in the 60s from New York City to Baltimore almost once every other month. And the youngster living next door to my aunt was a ham radio genius in elementary school.
Wow.
Wow.
In the basement of this fellow's row house in downtown Baltimore, he had carcasses of TV sets, radios, parts strewn all over the place, and he built his own equipment. He did not believe in out-of-the-box equipment. And with him as an Elmer, I got my ticket. And
Wow.
he and I, K3TNV, Mark Bass, he's still on the air today. He got me started, and I just fell in love with the hobby. Now, of course, if you think back to the late 1960s, ham radio was very much DX oriented. The whole idea was to build a piece of gear, build an antenna system, and get your signal out as far away from where you were as possible. That's what it was all about. It wasn't a shack on a belt type of a hobby in those days. So right from the get-go, I was very, very oriented towards getting my signal as far over one of the two ponds as possible.
Very cool.
So, in a nutshell, that's how I got started.
Yeah.
Of course, during the kid raising years, my time spent in front of a radio was limited, as everybody's is in those years. But having retired 10 years ago now, I spend the better part of my day sitting right here in front of my equipment on the air, if not the better part of the night as well.
So if someone were to get started, where would you tell them to get started at?
Well, that's a good question. And the other side of my activities in the amateur radio world is as a coordinator in the VE program. And with the Fayette Radio Club here in Fayette and Coweta counties, Georgia, we have a group of about half a dozen, maybe 8 or 10 VEs that I coordinate. And we give tests once a month. Got one coming up on Saturday morning. Those people that are registered for those tests, in this case, it's one technician and one gentleman looking to advance up to general and/or extra. When they pass their ticket, before they get to leave that room, they get an earful from me on there's life beyond 2-meter repeaters. I'm finding that the preponderance of people coming in for new tickets these days are oriented towards public safety, public service, doing that 2-meter FM type of stuff, which is fine, no problem. But I try to encourage them, and I bring along enough materials to give them, that there's life beyond 2-meter FM technology. In many cases, we are successful. We do programs at the club where we talk about propagation, we talk about antenna building, we talk about gear selection, we talk about the proper ways to make an HF contact, how to initiate a contact, where to look for people to talk to, nets and that sort of thing. We try to match them up with an Elmer in the club that is oriented in that direction to give them the opportunity to move beyond 2-meter repeaters.
So what if you just bumped into me and I've got my ticket, what would your 1-minute elevator talk be about why, repeaters are cool and the emergency and parades and all those things is really great and that's needed. And public service is very much needed, but there is this other part of it. What would you tell me?
An opportunity to meet people elsewhere in the world electronically on the radio. And these days, that's something that we ought to aspire to, building closer relationships with other peoples around the world. We go to Germany to the Hamfest there. My wife is a German national. She's got family over there. We get to meet other people. We had a trip before COVID that was probably the best trip we've ever made. We were going to visit Switzerland. I don't know what caused me to do this, but in planning for that trip, I went into one of the boxes over here in the closet. I've got 8 or 10 shoe boxes filled with QSL cards by country, by prefix. And I pulled out a bunch of DL cards and a bunch of Austrian cards, and I started flipping through them. And one caught my eye, a fella about my age at the time that we made the QSO, that we had a couple of skeds after which, and I dropped him an email, and I said, hey, we're going to be in Zurich on such and such day. He says, great. I'm now a student at the Technological University in Zurich. How about we meet and I show you around? And by the way, we have an amateur radio club station on the roof of our technology building.
Wow.
So, my wife and I met him at the railroad station. He took us onto the campus. We went up, and he wasn't kidding. It was a janitor's or utility closet on the roof of this 3-story building. They had a dipole strung diagonally across the roof. They had a beam up around the chimney on the side of the building. And I was working a few DX stations in downtown Zurich. And I was amazed at how many stations I was contacting. And then I suddenly realized I'm sitting in Central Europe. I'm not sitting in Georgia. But the point being, you get to meet people elsewhere in the world. You get to learn about different cultures. You get a tremendous picture of geography. You see how small the world really is beyond just the electronics and the radio technology.
So, Joe, between your DXpeditions and going to Friedrichshafen, you've kind of have the same experiences, right? You've run into guys you've been on islands with and vice versa.
Yeah. Yes. Been to Friedrichshafen several times, Jeff, and just love it over there, the camaraderie. Of course, I did some presentations to the group over there, and usually we would always plan a vacation. So we would either go like to Switzerland and then go to ham radio in Friedrichshafen or vice versa. So yeah, I totally agree with your concept.
It's a lot of fun. So if someone is, it's like, okay, I've got a setup, and we'll go into the details of that a little bit later. But what are some ways I can find DX stations? Do I just put the radio on and listen, or are there more specific ways that I can track these guys down?
Well, a lot of folks disagree with what I'm about to say, but I think it's really the best way to ease into it, especially for a newbie on the air. Somebody who just got a technician ticket, made a couple of repeater contacts, but that was about the extent of their interface with the technology. I try to encourage them to go to some of the regularly scheduled DX nets.
Okay.
That's what I try to do. 14-247, about this time of day, 3:30, 2:30 your time, 3:30 my time. 14-247, the old 240, I don't know what they call it anymore, but it used to be called the 247 DX net, is a good place to get some experience. And you've got a controlled net operator there, or operators now. They have one on 3 different continents that take turns. And you get about a dozen to a dozen and a half check-ins on the average day. But the nice part about it is you've got somebody serving as a traffic cop that moderates it for you, so you're not competing with a pileup to make a contact.
Right.
Get your feet wet. You get some experience in making a two-way contact and what the protocols are, what the verbiage is, and etc. From there, you could start to branch out. Then I introduced them to one of the common spotting programs like DX Summit. I take them there. I show them how it operates. I show them the bells and whistles, how to limit the kinds of DX that get spotted for you, though I like to keep it wide open. I don't care, if somebody is spotting from Indonesia. I realize they're spotting from Indonesia, and I make mental adjustments accordingly. But I show them what that's all about, and having spotted a station they think they want to work, now how to dial it in and set it up and attempt to make that contact.
Okay. Wow.
Mm.
And that does ease them in. I hadn't really thought about DX nets before like that. It's just, you don't want them to just get on listening around, because heck, where do you start? But if you've got a set frequency and someone in control, that's a solid idea. I never thought about that. So do you encourage them past that point? So if they're getting comfortable now, they're getting on more regularly, because we all know those guys that were all gung-ho and then they're on for a month or two and that's it. So let's say you get somebody that's on there kind of regularly. Where do you take them next? Where do you suggest they go next?
In terms of spotting stations, or in terms of moving into the DX world?
Moving into the DX world, or just moving into operating in general.
Well, the traditional approach has been, okay, let's start moving towards a recognized achievement award. And of course, the one that comes to everybody's mind immediately is ARRL's DXCC, DX Century Club Award. And I start to orient them towards compiling confirmations towards that award. Now, it's significantly different than when I started in that route 40 years ago. 40 years ago, you had to send away for a physical QSL card. That in and of itself could be a multiple year activity for that particular QSO. You collected those cards when they came in. Luckily, by the time I got heavily involved in DXing, I was living in Connecticut, so it was just a matter of getting on the interstate and going over to Newington to surrender my cards to a card checker. A little bit more difficult from Georgia, of course. But you collected those cards. You got your first 100. You got the certificate hanging on the wall behind you, Bill, there. And then you started moving from there. 5-band, walk band, mode endorsements, et cetera, and towards the ARRL DXCC's Centurion Award, band fills.
Right.
And I outline this in my book as the logical steps in that particular awards program. But what I try to tell my fellow club members here in North Central Georgia is there's life beyond the DXCC award. There are other recognized awards programs. And if you're going to be a paper chaser, an awards collector, then it might not be a bad idea to start looking now towards the future. And the next one I would orient them to, of course, is the Islands on the Air program.
Right. And let's talk about that for a minute. So that is something that, to be quite honest, I knew very little about until I talked to you the first time. So if you want to explain that program and how it works, and it's actually a very exciting program, and it also seems to be somewhat independent of the sunspot cycle. In other words, I don't need to just worry about islands that are located in Asia, which at the very low part of the sunspot cycle are going to be very difficult. I can work a lot of local stuff that I'm going to get, no matter where I'm at in that 11 years. So touch on that.
All right. The Islands on the Air program grew up out of the Radio Society of Great Britain. It was an RSGB program initially. And for at this point, most of its existence. It wasn't until Frederickshaven 2014, I believe it was, when I ran into, and I'm forgetting his call sign now, but at the time he was the DX bench at RSGB, and he was the chairman, if you will, of the program. At that time, I guess RSGB and the Islands on the Air participants felt it was time for a separation of the program from the organization. And I was invited onto the first independent board of directors of the Islands on the Program Limited when it split away from RSGB. Now, split, I got to define split. In operation and in incorporation, Islands on the Air LTD is a separate organization now.
Okay.
However, it's still supported logistically by RSGB. As I understand it, and I could be wrong, the IT backbone is still at RSGB, and there is some support from RSGB. But the operation of the program is a separate board of directors now, separate funding stream,
Okay.
standing as a UK, and I'll use the term 501c3. Of course, that's not what they use, but it's a not-for-profit corporate entity under the UK at this point. The program recognizes island groups. And in the manual for the program, which is on IOTA _, give me a second now. I'm drawing a blank on it. It'll come back to me.
I'll have it in the show notes, so it's okay.
Yeah. The manual is on the website. The geography for what constitutes a recognized island group is defined there in geographic terms. There are currently 1,150 IOTAs that one could attain.
Wow.
It literally takes decades, even for the most ardent IOTA chaser, to work them, because obviously some of them are uninhibited islands. Some of them are limitedly geographically accessible. Bouvet is an island,
Sure.
instance. So they're not all going to be activated in any given decade's time. But there are some very serious IOTA chasers, VE3 LYC, Cesar up in Toronto, for instance. He's on the road, if you will, putting islands on the air almost continuously. And there are others in the United States like him as well. So God love those people because they keep those islands hopping and going. And what I tell my DX friends is, hey, an entity in DXCC could very well also be an IOTA in the Islands on the Air program. So if you have, if you're focusing in two directions or a minimum of two directions in terms of awards, you'll be compiling credits in multiple awards programs simultaneously.
Yeah, so Peter the First and Bouvet and all those guys will count for both. And is it gaining momentum? And the reason I ask that is that, for instance, we had the group that is at TI1 CC.
Yeah.
Robinson Crusoe.
Yeah, Robinson Crusoe group, and they're going to Nicaragua, Panama, and Costa Rica, and they made it a point to say not only are we going to be there operating, but we're also going to be operating portable on these IOTA locations, which, by the way, also happen to be POTA locations, so you can get 3 credits while you're there. So it seems to be gaining more interest.
I believe so, and I certainly hope so. It's a hard sell in my club, Southeastern DX Club. The preponderance of our members are DXCC people, and I find myself, saying to them, DXCC is an awards program. DXing is an activity. You could be DXing and achieving multiple awards over and above DXCC. But it's a hard sell because a lot of those folks see it as one entity or one concept. But enough IOTA people are getting excited about the program. It's a very well administered program. We achieved some bridge building with the DX leadership at ARRL, so that now a physical card is not the only way to achieve credit. The LOTW system is now able to sort on IOTA numbers, and you could pull in through LOTW and IOTA credit now into the Islands on the Air software program. Likewise with Club Log, if the QSO is confirmed through Club Log, there's also a process to pull that credit into the IOTA program application through Club Log. So we've built a number of venues to circumvent the need for a physical card today.
So are there levels, like, DXCC has its levels, so to speak? Because you've got me intrigued now. I'm liable to log into LOTW and find out that I'm at, I've been doing this for a long time. I might be at 100 or 200 or 300 IoT numbers, which sounds low out of 1,100, but I have no idea where I'm at. So,
well, you'd actually first have to establish an account on the IOTA homepage.
Okay.
And then through the pull down for putting credits into the program, there's one for LOTW. And what that does, once you sign in through the IOTA page, it unlocks your account in the LOTW program and pulls those in.
Oh, wow. Okay.
There's no search Boolean way of going into LOTW and searching for IOTA numbers. We haven't gotten that far yet.
One step at a time.
That's good stuff, because it's like I'm just at the verge of being on Honor Roll. And the problem I'm having is, until there's de-expedition to places, Peter the First and Bouvet, which I don't have yet, I'm not going to make any progress. So what do I just sit around and wait for 2026? Well, no, I'd like to find ways to keep myself sharp. So CQ Marathon is a great way to do that. IOTA is a great way to do that. So
right.
I need to check that out. That's great. Thank you.
In the IOTA program, the progress steps are IOTA 100,
Okay,
IOTA 200, and all the way up to IOTA 1200. At 750, there's a plaque award. Why did they pick 750? I guess at the time it was about 3/4 of the way to home plate. So I just passed 750 this past August.
congratulations.
Which, I feel bad because I've been in this program since 1965. Yeah, but I wasn't concentrating on IOTAs. I was concentrating on DX entities, which is why I tell people, hey, look out of both eyes at the same time, because you'll get to where you want to get a lot sooner than if you wait until you finish one and then start working on the other.
And it's a balance, I suppose, because you don't want a program that's so easy, everybody can get it without a lot of effort, but it's so difficult that you can't get it. So this sounds like a right mix in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Very cool. Very cool. So if we go back now, you're working with these young hams. What do you tell them about equipment? Because one of the things that I hear a lot, and I do a weekly column for the Ohio Section Journal on DX, and every year I get a couple of emails about, boy, I'd like to get my son or my neighbor or somebody into this, but it's so expensive. And I sit back and think, I don't really have a great answer to that. But my response is, you wouldn't think twice about a new iPhone 16 at $1,800, so it becomes relative, but it is expensive. So how do you address, let's just talk about the actual station itself. We won't talk about antennas yet.
Well, actually, what I was going to say is my initial comment to young folks or any folks, especially at the VE sessions when they talk about equipping a station, I say, before you go out and spend megabucks on a transceiver, give some serious thought to your antenna system.
Okay.
Because the most expensive transceiver in the world is not going to pay dividends to you if you don't have a decent antenna system. So I said, what I would do is first scope that piece out, get something up in the air, probably a good dipole up at a decent elevation would be a good start. And then start to look at transceivers. You don't have to go for the highest end early in the hobby. First, get used to doing what you want to do on the radio, and then see what fits for your next outfit. Maybe something as conservative as an ICOM 7300 in today's market would be a good place to start. It has some good receiver characteristics. It has some good reviews. It has enough bells and whistles to do a whole lot for you, whether it's just rag chewing communication that you're interested in, or some more serious DXing, or working out in the field, parks on the air. It's a mobile type of radio. You know, it's got some good starter characteristics, and it's been on the market long enough that if you look at some of the buy and sell entities like QTH.com or EHAM.com, you're undoubtedly going to find more than a few of those that are up for sale at some decent prices. So I try to impress upon them that you don't have to go for an Elecraft K4 or a TS990 or some high buck $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 radio right off the bat. Start with something that has some good reviews, and we show them where to find those reviews, and concentrate on putting something good up in whatever geographic location, whatever constraints you happen to have, you know, as a homeowner or living in a home or living in an apartment or et cetera.
When you talk to these folks, what is their initial response to taking the next step from, let's say, 2 meters? And I don't want that to be disparaging at all, because that's fine. It's almost like, you know, we've got a great opportunity here, but we also have one over here. So what can we do to show them the second great opportunity, right?
Right.
So are most of them, are they at least open to it? So yeah, you know, that really does sound kind of neat. Or
the best motivator I've found is field day. Certainly, well, let me back up a little bit. The way we in the Fayette County Amateur Radio Club are working right now, that's Fayette County, Georgia, Fayetteville area, Georgia, is that when they pass an initial exam or an upgrade exam with my VE group, they're given a year's free membership, the first year's free membership in the club. And we found that that has a tremendous draw into the club. Once they're in the club, they're introduced to the 2 outings annually where we put radios on the air. First being Field Day in June, where we encourage them and we match them up with an Elmer to sit down in front of a radio and start to do some communicating. That gets a lot of them bought in to HF operating.
oh, great.
Second is we now have something called Winter Field Day,
Mm-hmm.
which was a couple of weeks ago, I believe. And again, same routine. We get them into operating. Now there are enough people in the club that have bought into this new DXing activity called Parks on the Air.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very much a DXing activity.
It is.
Now international.
Yeah.
Right? And we have smaller groups that are going out to activate parks. In fact, 2 weekends ago, quick side story, I also chase U.S. counties. And after 40 years, I've made it over the 3,000 mark.
Wow.
There's enough of them out there that I haven't been able to work. Well, a couple of weeks ago, 7 of the 59 Georgia counties still were unworked by me.
Really?
So a buddy of mine he's in the DX club with me, but he's also a very active Parks on the Air guy, said, give me a list of those. And we took the 7, we took a Georgia map, and we found 4 of them down in southwest Georgia that were in easy enough traveling distance. So he got in his truck, went down, and over an afternoon period, traversed each of those counties, put them on the air for me to work to get the county, and then worked parks out of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Parks on the Air has become a good motivator to get some of the folks onto the HF frequencies for the first time.
Yeah. Joe, did you have a question?
But Jeff, what's your thoughts about QSL cards and logging?
Well, we certainly still need to have and use, QSL cards. But certainly the number of cards that I found that I have to physically send out has dropped off extremely, extremely significantly with the use of LOTW, the use of Club Log. I don't use, was it EHAM, I think has, or was it QRZ has something? EHAM.
Yeah.
I don't use those. But certainly between LOTW and Club Log, the number of cards that I have to physically send out and wait for them to return has dropped off significantly. But we still have a need for them on occasion.
I have to admit, that's to this day, one of the charges I get is getting a card in the mail and opening up, looking at it. It's like, physically there's that confirmation, and I know it's dwindling, but I still look forward to it.
Mhm.
I think Joe and I were surprised last year. We are in charge of the DX forum at Hamvention, and we had a lot of people there, and there were some empty chairs, but I would say there was 450, 500 people there, maybe, Joe.
Yes.
And it's a big hall. Then we left, and about 20 minutes later, I couldn't find my jacket anywhere, and I thought, oh, I'll go back. I'll bet I left it in the hall, and it was the POTA seminar. And there were people hanging from the rafters, standing in the doorway, laying in the aisles. It was like, oh my gosh, this is terrific.
Yeah.
And we had on one of our episodes, K4SWL, Tom, who's a big POTA guy, and we just enjoyed the heck out of that. And yet, you're right. It's very much like a DXpedition, and you can work a lot of DX there. So that's a really cool aspect to this, and I'm glad you guys are leaning on that to keep people involved. That's great.
Yeah, it's co-joined outdoor activities, which a lot of people want to do. It's a family-oriented type of weekend or vacation activity, along with the HF operating that ham radio folks like to do. And I guess initially I was surprised. Now I understand it, that so many of our local club people are involved in that activity.
Mm-hmm.
And it fits in with the chapter in my book with talks where I talk about life beyond DXCC. It fits in very nicely, and it's a good way for people to get oriented towards HF communication.
And to me, it's also the same. We're not going to have an FT8 argument, so or discussion. I hate that word argument, discussion ahead of time. However, anything that keeps people on the air benefits the hobby, because ICOM is not going to design the next generation 7610 if there's no market. So any of this stuff it's all great. It's all great for the hobby. So
Yeah.
What I'm curious about is when you've got these new hams coming in, how many of them are antenna restricted, maybe HOA, or they live in a condo or an apartment or something? How many, and then how do you discuss that with them?
Most in this area are HOA restricted. We're living in a suburban Atlanta, or a pair of suburban Atlanta counties, southwest of the downtown Atlanta area. So most, probably all new construction, and most construction built within the last 25 or 30 years, single family or townhouse, are in restricted communities. Now, that said, there are plenty of people in my club that have figured out how to work around that. So it's not a door that has closed to the ability to put up something to generate an RF signal off of. But it's a significant issue for most of them. We moved here 14 years ago when I retired from Pensacola Junior College in the Panhandle of Florida. When I was living in Pensacola, I had a 60-foot tower up on my home, and I wasn't about to give up my enjoyable hobby. So and my wife was going to work in downtown Atlanta at the time. So we rented a house for a while and found a local real estate agent, and she spent 11 months traversing the Atlanta belt, completely around the city of Atlanta, from county to city, taking us to look for houses. My wife wanted new construction. I wanted to put up my 60-foot tower, mutually exclusive wants.
Yes.
But God bless this lady. She stuck with us. And finally, out of desperation, we're sitting in her office one weekend and she says, have you ever heard of Sonoy, Georgia? Home of the Walking Dead, if you watch that TV program. It's a small city inside Coweta County, Georgia, which 14 years ago was still a rural Georgia county. And she said, in 2008, this is 2010 that we're talking about, in 2008, the developer of this small plot of 30 acres went bankrupt almost immediately after beginning to lay out a subdivision. And the Bank of Georgia seized the property. They had the note on the property. And in 2010, during the downtown and the market, they were desperately trying to unload the 13 building lots in this little subdivision. So she took us to it. She explained what was happening. My wife was intrigued enough. There were covenants that had been filed with the county for the subdivision that only had one framed out house. It wasn't even closed. It was just framed. But the vice president in charge of repossessed properties, they actually had somebody with that title in 2010,
Wow.
was desperate enough that he said, show me what it is you want to do. So I brought one section of Rome 25 and I met him on the dirt lot and I planted it in what was the backyard. And I said, picture 6 of these up and a whole bunch of wires in the trees. And he says, well, put down on paper what you want us to exclude you from. ARRL has volunteer councils. So I found the one in Atlanta. I sent him the document from the county courthouse that showed the prohibitions in this subdivision. He wrote up the exclusionary language he wanted. The Bank of Georgia put it on their letterhead. They were the committee of record at that point. They had the authority to do that. And it filed with the deed. And the first thing that went up on this lot was a 60-foot round tower.
There you go.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Wow.
So how many acres, how big's your lot, Jeff?
1.6 acres. It's a small lot. I mean, it's a single cul-de-sac subdivision with 13 properties in it, all about 1.3 to 1.6 acres. But there are enough pine trees that we did a lot of planting. You know, we were the first on this side of the road, so we put up a lot of what eventually became high trees. So, you know, out of respect for my neighbors, you've got to look to see the tower from the road.
No.
You know, it's not obtrusive,
Wow.
but it's
Good for you. That must have been very exciting to come away from that meeting saying, okay, here's what we're going to do.
You should have bought the whole 30 acres, Jeff.
But we did try to buy the lot adjacent to us to give myself a little bit more elbow room. But at that point, the bank was talking to another developer, and they just didn't want to go that far.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different story of what happened over there. Because in the 2 years between us building and that one selling, I put over 1,000 feet of loop wire in the trees that circumvented that lot as well. And once that builder bought that lot from the bank, I was advised to take it down real fast.
Wow. Wow. So when you're talking to these folks, one of the things that I find really intriguing about radio is propagation. Simply because, you know, what's there today may not be there tomorrow. And there you may have a whole string of great days, and all of a sudden you feel like your coax has been disconnected because of some sort of a solar event or something. So how do you get into that discussion?
Very cautiously. I don't want to scare new HF operators off the air before they've gotten on the air, but I want to give them enough of an orientation to understand what bands they ought to be attempting to listen on and make contacts on at what time of day or night. some of the basic characteristics of what differentiates 20 meters from 160 meters, etc. In the case of 6 meters, which I really enjoy, what part of the year should you start listening, watching for spots on 6 meters, and when would you expect it to start closing down? That kind of orientation. And then how to use programs such as the DX Summit spotting program in terms of propagation prediction, that and club log. Once they get into the hobby a little bit, and we try to get them to, in the case of the Southeastern DX Club, sign on to club leagues within club log, we start to show them how to use the propagation tools in club log to their advantage when they're trying to work certain entities. I'm also playing in, I guess it's still called the CQ Marathon or DX Marathon. I still play in it, and I've got my JT alerts set up for that award as well as DXCC. So even though I might have worked a particular entity on every band over the years, I still need to work it in 2025. So I'm watching that very cautiously. And for those that I know are on the air right now that I haven't worked, I use DX Summit and Club Log propagation to alert me to the best time to be sitting in front of my computer and radio to be able to have a chance working them.
Okay. I always refer to CQ Marathon as the reason I need to get in and work Germany 10 more times in 25 as opposed to 24, bands and modes. Go ahead, Joe.
So Jeff, on 6 meters for our listeners, when is the best time for them to be on 6 meters?
Well, based on the last couple of years, coming into March now, it's probably worth keeping an eye on spotting tools because I think we're going to see spots open up within the next few, if not several weeks.
Good.
Okay. So as they move up the continuum now, they're getting better at it. They're spending more time on it. They're starting to really enjoy and seek out. How do you get into other operating practices like splits and those kinds of things?
Well, splits are very important, and for newbie DXers or HF operators, I try to impress upon them that if you're seeing an entity that is reasonably rare, and that's somebody have to define that, but reasonably rare. Iraq, it's not rare DX, but it's not one that you're going to see every day of the week. Mm-hmm. And you see that individual operating on 14,250. Stop and listen. Listen to see if you could hear who he is talking to. And if you don't hear somebody coming back and you hear him in conference or conversation or exchanging signal reports, make the assumption he's working split. I would suggest look at a spotting program and see if that individual has been spotted and see what the comments are. Up 5, up 2. Is he working CW? Is he working sideband? Look for those kinds of comments. Don't start calling him without first doing a little bit of frequency research.
Yeah, how important is listening, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yes. Joe has a great story about James Brooks, right, Joe, where you were listening and you worked him because you were listening.
So we were on 20 meters and he was on Scarborough Reef. Big pile up, as you can imagine. We was on 14,220. He was on 14,220. And listening, 10 to 15 up because of the big pile up. And I'm in there with all the rest of the guys and girls calling. And just right out of the blue, he said 258. And I'm thinking to myself, man, that is strange. He said 258. So I go up to 14,258. And I gave him one call and worked him. And then I called my local friend, because we're all DXers, and told him the same thing. We were on 146.58 FM. And so he did the same thing. He was on 258, gave him one call, and worked Scarborough Reef. But the point is exactly what you're saying, Jeff. You have to listen to that operator and understand what he's saying.
Mhm.
If he says 5 to 10 up, fine. Or if he says some other number, then you might know that he's going up the band. And sometimes on D expeditions, we will do that so our friends know that we're up there listening for them. But that's on the other end of the palette.
Yeah.
I'm kind of disappointed that the VK9XU,
Yes.
when he's working sideband or whoever is working sideband on that team, uh, they were into a 15 to 20 KC split
Mm.
the day, no discernible pattern, and unfortunately, no one was spotting where they were working on DX Summit. It was a very aggravating couple of hours trying to figure out. Normally, what I do is I just take whatever defined split is attributed to them and split the difference, and I park myself there. I don't have a lot of success even with the scope trying to figure out which direction he's moving in, or if he's moving, or where he's planting himself. So it becomes more of find a piece of real estate, hold on to it, and keep calling until he finds you.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Yes.
And that does become a struggle because it's like, I think I have an open spot. Why would I leave? But if he's not listening here, I'm wasting time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're right. And that to me all comes through experience, right? You got to be in the chair, you got to be listening, etc. So, well, let's switch gears then, because what actually attracted where I found out about you in the first place is this, and I can't quite get it to focus. There it is.
There it is.
There it is. So it's a book that you put together, the Nifty Easy Guide to Adventures in DXing, and I will put a link in the show notes. But it is really, really good.
Thank you.
And I have a friend of mine who recently recently, my goodness, now I guess it's been a year, but I got Bob a copy, and I fully expect him to be on the air soon. So I'm curious about the journey to writing the book and how you pulled everything together, and just what kind of how did you get there?
Well, my history is I was an academic. I was a college professor and administrator for 30 some odd years, and part of doing that, part of surviving in that world is quote publish or perish. So over the years, I wrote a lot of books in my professional field. Retired, and sort of still had the itch to write, but I had no academic or professional purpose to do it anymore. But again, I'm married to some degree to this hobby and enjoy it, and like to share ideas, et cetera, learn from other people. So somebody said to me, well, if you're inclined to write, there aren't too many books out there right now on DXing. Why don't you give it a try? Well, that was at one of the international DX conventions where somebody put that thought in my head, and I went out there with W3UR, and we talked a little bit. And initially, I had wanted him to go in partnership with me on writing it, but he was extremely busy in those years with the newsletter, with the two newsletters, and just didn't feel he had the time to do it. But he gave me some other support from his organization to start getting it off the ground. So I sat down and I wrote out what I thought was a reasonable outline to try to orient someone for getting into the DXing part of the hobby. I wanted to make it attractive enough for the person that had been on the air for a while, but just didn't go chasing after awards, and somebody coming into the hobby anew. So I tried to find that fork in the road, if you will, between the total novice to the hobby and the person with experience behind a microphone or key, but not necessarily chasing awards.
Right.
And from that vantage point to those two vantage points, that's how I pulled the chapters together.
Wow.
But one of the things I wanted to emphasize was there's life beyond DXCC as an awards program.
Yeah, I'm flipping through it. I mean, it is so well illustrated. The format is really this is going to sound silly, I guess, but the bold versus the text. It jumps out. You can find what you're looking for very quickly. Um, and I thought there was some very smart use of awards, like the 13 colonies. That's a fun thing to track down. It doesn't take forever. It's got a limited a time frame, and I enjoy that every year. And some of the other ones, I mean, I'm being rude. I'm not looking up. I'm flipping through it, but you have screenshots, and I was so glad because one of the things I think is one of the best kept secrets in radio is the WA7 B&M contest calendar. I think it's terrific. So you have that in here, which I think is just great. So even to the point where you have some drawings about what an antenna sloping dipole would look like, et cetera. It's really just a great book. And
Well, thank you.
and as I went through it, I thought this is really good stuff. I couldn't wait to talk to you. So when's the next one coming out?
Well, I had wanted to do some updates to it, but at this point, the publisher doesn't want to go down that road right now. So I'm on hold with those sorts of things. But there's room to improve it. I certainly would like to be able to add some knowledge on FT8 as a mode of operation and some of the technologies that have grown up since 2016.
Yeah, it's really, really good. I'm glad to hear that. We had kicked around the idea years ago of a book that would be in PDF format, so that we could update it every 6 months and then have it available, and it was always new. That really never got off the ground, but that's something we kicked around. But boy, when I came across this, great stuff, really. And I will have show notes in there on this, on how people can order it. And I assume you've gotten some really excellent feedback.
Yes, there's some good feedback over the years. Amazon does have that technology and service. You could publish. Amazon has I don't know if it's a corporate offshoot or it's a division, but where you could self-publish a book, and basically it's a PDF.
Oh,
And you could sell it on Amazon in either PDF form or hardcover form. It's printed by the publisher on a sale-by-sale basis.
oh wow, okay.
So what bands do you operate day to day, Jeff?
I'm across all of the bands. I start out, if I was up 5:30 this morning. I started out on 30. Christmas Island, I still need as a band fill on 30, and they were coming in pretty good. Super Fox, are you familiar with Super Fox?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, they were operating Super Fox on 30, and then I moved over to 40 after that. And I enjoy a morning net, a sideband net on 40 meters that reaches into your area on 7251. It's called the South Coast.
Oh yeah.
I enjoy checking in there on the morning, and then I move over to the HF bands into the evening when I move back in the other direction.
Because I sort of do the same thing every morning, 30, 40, and then I always look at 160, 80, just to be sure, Yeah, interesting.
I've got a 160 inverted L up,
Yes.
hanging off my tower. But 160, I can't get into 160. The noise is so even with a beverage that I have out there, I can't get into 160.
Yeah, I've got 25 acres here, but I've got two towers, 160 and 180. But my 160L runs off of the 80-foot tower, and then I've got 4 beverages that are up. But I got the land, fortunately, to do that.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about 160, and I've only been on it since 2016, I guess. You can get on anytime during the day right now, and you could work Spain, you could work France, you could pretty much anything into Europe, and quite a bit of South America. But boy, you work that on 160, and number one, it's a challenge. And number two, you feel so good. I just spent 35 minutes trying to confirm this QSO with a guy in Switzerland on 160. And you want to dance around and because it's 160.
Yeah.
Other folks are just so have you had any experience with 60 meters? Because Joe's kind of been nicknamed the godfather of 60. So
I've got maybe about 40, 45 confirmed on 60. I've got an antenna, a dipole up on 60. But again, I just haven't been motivated to spend any time on 60.
Yeah. I've got 249 on 60.
Joe, but were you guys offering an award or something, Joe, at one point for working 100? I mean, kind of unofficial. I mean, I know it's not.
Yes, we have an award, Jeff, that for WAS and DXCC on 60, but obviously it has nothing to do with the DXCC program.
Right.
We just had a fellow 2 weeks ago that got 100 countries on QRP on 60 meters, and that's the first one we've ever had. We've handed out quite a few certificates, but never QRP. So that was a little, a little unusual.
Wow.
Yeah, I like 60 meters.
Yeah, I know you do.
What's your main transceiver?
76, I had to think. I'm looking at it, 7610.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the offsets for 60 meters, is that something you have to program into an icon rig?
Well, yes, all mine are all programmed in, so it's real simple. And most of the activity is on the FT8 channel, if you would. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't played with the K4 yet. I've only owned the K4 now since August. I haven't played with it. I had the K3S working well on 60, but I haven't played with the K4 yet to see how the system goes.
Sure.
Joe, have we left anything out?
I don't think so, Bill. We covered Jeff pretty good.
I think we did. Jeff, anything you're sitting there thinking, I can't believe they didn't ask me about amplifiers versus antennas or
Well, we could really talk all day and all night probably on the subject.
well, we probably could. But I'll make you this offer before I forget about it. If you have the writing urge and you don't have an outlet, I am the editor of 2 DX Club newsletters as well as a weekly DX column. So you got anything you want to get published, you get it to me. I'll take care of it.
Yes.
That's good to know.
Yeah, content is not easy. Good content is not easy to get.
Right.
So yeah, I'd love to be an outlet. That would be terrific.
Yeah.
Man, oh man. All righty, sir. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed this, and I knew I would, and like I said, the book really is one of the better books that certainly in ham radio I've come across, and it's comprehensive, but you don't feel like you need a degree to read it and understand it and use it. So hats off. That was very well done.
Thanks very much. Appreciate the feedback.
Jeff, nice seeing you again. Since we're not having the convention in Pigeon Forge anymore, so I don't know where we'll run into you, but hopefully in Dayton at the DX dinner.
I didn't realize you discontinued it.
Yes. COVID really killed the thing, unfortunately, because everybody was just scared to death to be around a group of people, understandably, and it just fell off, and we just could not get a crowd. Then the hotel raised the rates
significantly.
Oh yeah, big time. So who wanted to come down there for a couple of days and spend $1,000? So that really hurt us. But it is still going on over in Huntsville at the Hamfest. There's a group over there that took it over.
Yeah, we were there this past August, and I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so they're over there.
I assume IOTA has some. Do they have like a national? Is there an Island Person of the Year or a DXpedition IOTA DXpedition of the Year or anything like that they give out? Or
The IREF, which is their foundation, does recognize significant DXpeditions annually.
Okay.
The get-togethers are either at Germany, Friedrichshafen, or Visalia annually. In both locations, they usually have, not usually, they have a dinner and they have an event.
Okay. I know I'm jumping all over the place on you, but
So is Mike Conover still in charge of that, Jeff?
Well, yeah, Mike is an officer in IREF.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw him in Visalia this past April. Yeah.
yeah, I think for 2 years, they announced the DXpedition of the year at our DX dinner.
Mhm.
And then when I contacted them for the third year, it was like, well, we're doing something differently now, but thank you. They were great to work with, very easy to work with, and a lot of interest. So I kind of miss them not being there, but things change, and I understand that. So,
Sure. Sure.
all right, buddy. Well, I really appreciate it, and I sure hope to meet you someday.
Absolutely, yeah.
But
Yeah.
keep me in mind for your articles, and if you know you're coming to Hamvention, we'll take care of you.
Yeah.
We'd love to meet you there as well. So. Joe, and thank you as always, buddy. This is very
Yes,
good,
sir.
and I'll be in touch with both of you.
Yeah. Thank you much, Jeff. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Thanks, Jeff. I hope you found that as interesting as I did. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the DX Mentor. I would like to thank our sponsors, ICOM America, the Daily DX, DX Engineering, and the Southwest Ohio DX Association. You won't find anyone more committed to DX than those sponsors. And of course, I would like to thank our guests today, Jeffrey, K1ZN, and Joe, W8GEX. And a special thanks goes to you, the listener and the viewer. Without you, there'd be no reason to do this. I would love to have your feedback, answer your questions, and provide help with any DX or amateur radio issues that you may have. If you need clarification on something or you just have a question or comment, email me at thedxmentor@gmail.com. Please drop me a line if you've achieved an all-time new one, receive recognition, or have a DX event that you would like us to mention. We would be happy to do that. If you are enjoying these DX Mentor episodes, please hit the subscribe button. You can also click like if you found this one particularly interesting, and don't forget about our Facebook page. 7-3 for this episode. Thanks to my ex-wife Karen for her love and support. I hope to see you in the pile-ups.